2006, this was an interesting year for computing in general. We had the release of the Core 2 Duo, we had the release of the Nvidia 8800 GT. AMD brought out their Athlon X2 series. It wasn't that successful. It was the first kind of CPU where they started to fall apart. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to try and do a 2016 build. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. 2006 PC, what does this mean? Well, we've got an Intel Core 2 Duo E6300. We have 2GB of DDR2 RAM, 66.7 MHz. We have an Nvidia 7950 GT, 256 meg card, about mid-range from that time. We have a 160GB Western Digital hard drive, SATA, and 2 DVD drives, one is SATA, one is IDE. And 460 watt power supply because it was kind of what they had back then, and of course case is going to be an ATX model. So let's go ahead and put this guy together. Alright guys, so moment of truth, does it turn on? Well, let's go ahead and find out. That's a good sign, there's life. So, hey, cool. Alright, so we've got a 9500 GT, 6300, 1.8, 2GB of RAM, don't know how well you can see the screen. We're good to go. So, I suppose at this point I should kind of bring up the point that 2006 PC kind of needs a 2006 screen. So we've grabbed one of those. It's 1028 by 1024, so 4x3 standard kind of res from that time. A lot of people gamed at that res. We've got just generic PS2 keyboard, PS2 mouse, multimedia buttons. Kind of things that people did have back then, basically. There was none of this kind of fancy gaming keyboards, or if there were, they were incredibly expensive. So that's booted. Alright guys, let's go ahead and let's kind of find out what you can do with one of these things. Alright, so just going off a bit of the game footage, we're going to try and mash this all together for you guys. So first up we had Sims 2. It ran expectedly brilliantly on this system. I mean, it's not a hard game to run. Next up was Tokka 3, a little bit more taxing, but again it looked very fluid, it ran very fluid as you can see in the footage. Then we tried a couple more games that are a bit more difficult, and we ran Doom 3. Doom 3 ran pretty well on high or ultra, but it couldn't run anti-aliasing. I noticed it did get very laggy on anti-aliasing. Fallout New Vegas was next, and that was probably where the deal started to come apart. On low settings, even at that 1280 by 1024 resolution, this game did experience a fair amount of lag, especially when there was multiple characters on the map. I found it wasn't the rendering that was the issue, it seemed to be processing, which then prompted me to do an overclock. Now, I did run the rest of the testing first. I also ran Crisis, albeit on low settings, but again, it did run reasonably comfortably. So let's go ahead and show you that overclock, guys. Alright guys, so stock frequency of 1.86 gigahertz. From here we want to do incremental overclocks. So initially we're doing a 333 megahertz frontside bus with a 1.325 volt core. The reason for this is because this is going to be the first safe, stable step that we know. And once this boots again, we go back into the BIOS. I put the frequency up to 350 megahertz frontside bus and leave the core voltage as it was to get 2.45 gigahertz. From there, we want to go all the way to the maximum we wanted, which was 400 megahertz frontside bus, giving us an overclock of 2.8 gigahertz. I also bumped the core frequency up to 1.335 volts, just for that little bit extra if it needed, but it didn't end up needing it because the process is pretty good. Intel just decided to limit the multiplier on it. The next step from here is to run your monitoring tools. So I run hardware monitor, and then I run my CPU burn-in utilities, which allows me to max the CPUs at 100% for a designated time. I usually do about half an hour stress test to kind of gauge where it needs to be. Alright guys, so after we've done the overclock, just kind of running crisis footage here just so you can kind of see the difference. In general, the major gain that benefited from this was Fallout New Vegas. It went from being very stuttery to reasonably playable actually. So the overclock made a difference with the gaming performance. Also, I want to just kind of demonstrate the general usage. Now, for those of you who don't know, I actually do have a website for the channel. It's just called techverb.com. Shameless plug, I know. And basically I just kind of went on the website, ran up a couple of YouTube videos of mine, and went through and tried a few different things. Also ran Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, a little bit of Notepad, a lot of different general applications you'd use, and it still actually ran them quite okay. Now I do wonder whether that's because it's running on XP, or that's just because in general it's still a reasonable, kind of entry-level computer by modern standards. So let's move on to the conclusion. Alright guys, so conclusion time. Overall, this was a pretty fun experience. It was nice to do a retro build. I haven't done one in a very long time. I must say this is probably the easiest retro build you're going to do. If you want to go back further than this, then you're going to have a very difficult time finding parts, getting drivers, all sorts of things. So overall, this is about as far back as I would go for a retro build. If you really want to run Doom, run DOSBox, and just do it that way. Don't go back any further than this. Having said that, how would I rate this PC? There was a lot that it couldn't do. There were a lot of games it couldn't run. Even games from its time, like I couldn't run them at ultra settings. I had to turn settings down. Some of the games didn't run until we put an overclock on it. So overall, I wouldn't say it was a great experience. If I was going to do it again, I would pick something from the higher end of that era. So I would pick probably a quad core, say a Q6600. I would definitely pick a better graphics card. Would definitely pick a bit more RAM, and I would definitely be running Windows 7. Just because everything will work on Windows 7, everything will work on that platform. And if you're doing a retro build, you don't want to have to deal with trying to troubleshoot this stuff. If you're doing it, you're doing it because you want to run Fallout 3 in a native environment, or Age of Empires on a machine, or things like that. So, all in all, thanks for watching, guys. Give this one a like if you liked it, give it a dislike if you disliked it. Leave a comment down the bottom if you like this kind of content, you want to see me keep doing this sort of stuff. I mean, it's a bit unique to what I've done before. It was very difficult to kind of write this one. So, overall, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.